In this podcast episode, Ben Shapiro discusses the aftermath of Hurricane Helene and the urgent need for relief efforts before transitioning to the escalating tensions in the Middle East, particularly Israel's military actions against Hezbollah and Hamas. He also critiques the Biden administration's foreign policy, examines the implications of the killing of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah, and addresses immigration policy under Vice President Kamala Harris, all while emphasizing the importance of a strong national security stance. In the wake of Hurricane Helene, which has wreaked havoc across North Carolina and other southeastern states, millions are left without power and facing significant destruction. Shapiro emphasizes the importance of supporting relief efforts for those affected by the hurricane, urging listeners to contribute to recovery initiatives. Shapiro transitions to discuss the escalating tensions in the Middle East, particularly Israel's military actions against Hezbollah and Hamas. He outlines the evolution of the situation following the October 7th attacks by Hamas, which prompted a robust military response from Israel. He highlights Hezbollah's role as an Iranian proxy group, noting that it has emerged as a significant threat to Israel, arguably more so than Hamas. Shapiro provides historical context, referencing Israel's unilateral withdrawals from Lebanon in 2000 and Gaza in 2005. He argues that these withdrawals have contributed to increased instability and heightened threats against Israel. He critiques the Biden administration's foreign policy, suggesting that it has emboldened Iran and its proxies, leading to a multi-front conflict that poses a serious challenge to Israeli security. Shapiro discusses Israel's recent military operation, dubbed Operation Grim Beeper, which targeted Hezbollah's communication infrastructure. He humorously notes that Hezbollah resorted to using beepers due to concerns over Israeli surveillance. The operation successfully disrupted Hezbollah's capabilities, inflicting significant damage on their military assets. He asserts that a strong military response is indicative of a first-world country, drawing parallels to U.S. military actions following Pearl Harbor and 9/11. Shapiro argues that Israel's response to the October 7th attacks has been effective, significantly weakening both Hamas and Hezbollah's operational capabilities. The podcast delves into the implications of the killing of Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah. Shapiro describes this event as transformative for the region, detailing how Israeli intelligence successfully located and executed a strike against Nasrallah while Prime Minister Netanyahu was delivering a speech at the UN. This operation is portrayed as a decisive moment that could reshape the balance of power in the Middle East. Shapiro posits that Nasrallah's death may create new opportunities for peace as it diminishes Iran's influence through its proxies. He references commentary from former U.S. officials who suggest that the current geopolitical climate presents a unique chance to address long-standing conflicts in the region. Shapiro discusses the reactions from Iran and other regional players following Nasrallah's death. He notes that Iran's leadership is now in a vulnerable position, which could have significant ramifications for its influence in the region. He critiques the Biden administration's foreign policy approach, arguing that their attempts at diplomacy have been ineffective in light of Israel's military successes. The podcast highlights internal divisions within the Biden administration regarding their response to the conflict. Shapiro points out contrasting views, particularly between National Security Council spokesperson John Kerry and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. Kirby asserts that there is no mourning for Nasrallah, framing his death as a necessary action against terrorism. In contrast, Austin advocates for diplomatic solutions, suggesting that diplomacy should always be the first approach. Shapiro critiques the Biden administration's reluctance to fully support Israel, suggesting that this hesitance could lead to unrest among their political base, particularly among progressive groups that oppose military actions in the region. He argues that the administration's perceived lack of leadership has made the world more dangerous as Israel navigates a complex geopolitical landscape with diminished American influence. Shapiro shifts focus to Vice President Kamala Harris's recent visit to the U.S.-Mexico border, where she attempts to project toughness on immigration. He notes that her approval ratings among Latino voters have significantly declined compared to previous Democratic candidates, indicating a troubling trend for the Biden-Harris campaign. Citing a recent NBC News Telemundo poll, Shapiro highlights Harris's 14-point advantage among Latino voters, a stark contrast to Joe Biden's 36-point advantage in 2020. As Harris announces measures to close the border and increase penalties for illegal crossings, Shapiro recalls her past statements from 2019, where she claimed that Trump was creating a fictional crisis at the border. He points out the irony of her current tough stance, given her previous dismissal of border security issues. The conversation turns to former President Donald Trump's comments about Harris, where he jokingly suggests that she has always been mentally impaired. Shapiro argues that such remarks are not out of line, especially considering the frequent criticisms directed at Trump regarding his intelligence. He emphasizes that Harris's tenure has seen a record number of illegal crossings, which he attributes to her policies that he believes have weakened border security. Shapiro discusses John Kerry's suggestion that the First Amendment should be curtailed to combat disinformation. He expresses concern over this viewpoint, interpreting it as an attack on fundamental American principles in favor of a more controlled narrative. Shapiro frames this as part of a broader trend among Democrats to suppress dissenting opinions and control the information landscape.